He's quoted as being a brilliant psychoanalyst, psychotherapist, child psychologist. It was more that he, kind of living a lie.
Concentrate.
He was just as scared as...
Sometimes you feel it inside, like you're falling down real fast, but you're really just standing still.
25 years ago, a single whisper froze audiences in their seats. I see dead people. It was the line that defined an era of cinema, the twist that left jaws on the floor, and the performance that forever changed how the world saw Bruce Willis. But what if I told you that the man at the center of this phenomenon wasn't fully in control of his own destiny, that Hollywood itself punished him into silence, locked him into a film he never wanted, and forced him to play a role he barely understood? Because behind the glowing success of The Sixth Sense lies a buried truth, a secret deal, a hidden punishment, and a web of deception so carefully woven that even Willis himself was kept in the dark. Why did Disney force one of the biggest stars in the world into this film as a form of corporate revenge? What bizarre tricks did director M. Night Shyamalan pull, not just on audiences but on his own lead actor, to keep the film's shocking twist intact? And how did Bruce Willis finally break his silence about the haunting truth behind one of cinema's greatest secrets? This is the untold story of The Sixth Sense, the deal that nearly destroyed Bruce Willis, the deception that made him question his own role, and the secret language hidden inside a movie that fans thought they understood. Until now. So, before we peel back the curtain, don't forget to subscribe, because today, we're about to uncover the Hollywood punishment deal that turned a curse into a masterpiece. When audiences saw Bruce Willis step into the role of Dr. Malcolm Crowe, most assumed it was just another brilliant casting choice. After all, Willis was already a global superstar, the wisecracking action hero from Die Hard, the man who could carry explosions and comedy with equal force. But The Sixth Sense was not a choice, it was a sentence. The story begins with a forgotten film called The Broadway Brawler. Willis wasn't just starring in it, he was co-producing it with Disney. On paper, it looked like a lighthearted romantic comedy. In reality, it spiraled into one of Hollywood's most expensive disasters. Just 3 weeks into filming, Willis clashed with nearly everyone on set. Dissatisfied with the direction of the project, he fired the director, the cinematographer, and much of the crew in a bold attempt to reshape the movie. The result? Chaos. Disney shut the production down, hemorrhaging nearly $17.5 million in losses. For a studio like Disney,
In a private settlement, Willis agreed to star in 3 Disney films at a reduced salary, with much of his pay funneled back to offset the Broadway Brawler disaster. He had no real choice. To walk away meant risking his career. To comply meant surrendering control. The first of those films was Armageddon, a Michael Bay blockbuster that roared to global success. The second was a quiet little supernatural thriller from an untested young director named M. Night Shyamalan. And that film, meant as corporate penance, would go on to rewrite Bruce Willis's destiny. By 1998, Bruce Willis's career was in flux. Armageddon had been a box office juggernaut, sure, but critics saw him as little more than the grinning cowboy from Die Hard. Explosions, one-liners, swagger. He was typecast as the action hero who could save the day with a gun and a smirk. So when Disney handed him The Sixth Sense as the second punishment project, expectations were low. Few believed Willis had the restraint or emotional depth to carry a slow-burn psychological thriller. And yet, it was precisely in that crucible, stripped of choice, humbled by obligation, that Willis found himself forced into a role unlike anything he had ever played. But here's where the story turns haunting. Bruce Willis wasn't just acting under contract. He was acting blind. From day one, director M. Night Shyamalan guarded his script like state secrets. The ending, the revelation that Dr. Malcolm Crowe was dead all along, was locked away. Willis never saw the final pages. He wasn't told the full truth of his character's arc. Even in the sound booth, recording dialogue after filming, he was handed fake lines, designed to mislead even the sound engineers working on the movie. It was deception on a scale Hollywood had rarely seen. And the result was extraordinary. Because Willis didn't know his character's fate, his performance carried a natural sense of distance, an unexplainable sadness, a confusion that felt raw and real. He wasn't playing a ghost. He was stumbling through scenes without a map, grasping for meaning, just as the audience would. What could have been a weakness became the film's greatest strength. His quiet melancholy, his fragile attempts at connection with young Cole, and his sense of being lost. These weren't rehearsed. They were authentic. When Willis finally saw the completed film at the cast and crew screening, he reportedly gasped with the same shock audiences around the world would later feel. He had been living the twist all along without knowing it. And that's the paradox. What began as corporal punishment became one of the most celebrated performances of his career. Disney thought they were forcing Willis to pay off a debt. Instead, they had set the stage for his ultimate redemption. The genius and the madness of The Sixth Sense didn't lie only in its twist. It lay in how far M. Night Shyamalan went to protect it. This was a director barely in his late 20s, unknown, unproven, suddenly holding the career of Bruce Willis and the trust of Disney in his hands. If word of the ending leaked, the entire film would collapse. So Shyamalan built a fortress of secrecy, not just around the set, but inside it. Scripts were printed on red paper so they couldn't be photocopied. Pages were delivered piecemeal, with actors only receiving the lines they needed for that day. Even Willis himself, Disney's megastar, the man who had carried billion-dollar blockbusters, was deliberately left in the dark. Shyamalan knew that keeping him off balance would create an authenticity no method acting could replicate. But deception breeds paranoia. Cast members whispered about whether their scenes even meant what they thought. Toni Collette, playing Cole's mother, later admitted she had no idea the film's true direction until the very end. Even Haley Joel Osment, the child at the story's center, was shielded from the full truth. Behind the camera, the tension was just as sharp. Disney executives hovered, still bitter over the Broadway brawler disaster, eager to ensure their punishment film didn't become another costly embarrassment. They questioned Shyamalan's choices, second-guessed his vision, and pressured Willis to stay in line. But Willis, cornered and stripped of leverage, did something unexpected. He surrendered. Gone was the action hero who fired directors and bent sets to his will. In his place stood a subdued, almost fragile performer, quietly following Shyamalan's lead. The gamble paid off. The secrecy, the manipulation, the forced humility, it all built toward a haunting alchemy no one could have predicted. What should have been a studio-mandated apology project was turning into something else, a masterpiece in the making. Yet with every layer of secrecy came new risks. If the truth slipped, if the audience guessed the twist before the credits rolled, everything, Willis's fragile redemption, Shyamalan's career, Disney's investment, would come crashing down. The stakes had never been higher. Every great film hides secrets in plain sight. But The Sixth Sense was designed like a puzzle box, layer after layer of clues, buried so deep that even the cast barely realized what they were part of. Take the color red. To most viewers, it looked like set dressing, an exit sign, a doorknob, a balloon drifting upward. But in Shyamalan's vision, red was the signal of the supernatural, a flare in the darkness. Every time the world of the living intersected with the realm of the dead, red appeared, silently screaming the truth. Then there was the cold air, the frost that seeped into rooms before a ghost appeared. Willis would shiver, breath visible, eyes wide. It wasn't just atmosphere, it was foreshadowing. The temperature dropped because he was one of them. But perhaps the most chilling trick was structural. Watch closely, and you'll notice, not a single living character ever directly acknowledges Willis's presence after the opening scene. He never speaks to a waitress, never shares a word with Colette's character. Even the so-called conversations with his wife are one-sided illusions, stitched together with silence and longing looks. Audiences didn't see it because Shyamalan bent the language of cinema itself. He framed shots to suggest connection when none existed. He let silence masquerade as dialogue. He lulled us into believing what we expected to see. Behind the curtain, this level of manipulation demanded discipline. Scenes were rehearsed in fragments, often without full context. Willis reportedly grew frustrated, unsure of his character's purpose. But Shyamalan reassured him, just trust the process. And trust he did. The irony? Willis's own confusion, his inability to understand why his character felt so distant, was exactly what the film required. That fragile sadness in his eyes, that quiet sense of being shut out of the world. It wasn't acting. It was real. Even the crew wasn't immune. During test screenings, Disney executives wagered that audiences would spot the twist. They didn't. When the ending hit, theater after theater gasped, screamed, and sat in stunned silence. Some claimed they could feel the air leave the room. What began as a punishment had now become something else entirely. A haunting miracle, hiding its truths in symbols, silence, and shadows. And in the process, Bruce Willis, Hollywood's action cowboy, had delivered one of the most heartbreaking, restrained performances of his career. When The Sixth Sense hit theaters in August 1999, nobody was prepared for the storm it unleashed. Disney, which had expected a modest supernatural thriller, suddenly found itself holding a box office juggernaut. The film grossed over $670 million worldwide, a staggering figure for a quiet, slow-burning drama with no explosions, no car chases, no traditional heroics. It became the second highest-grossing film of the year, outpacing even Disney's own animated empire. For M. Night Shyamalan, the film was a coronation. Practically overnight, the unknown director became the next Spielberg. Hollywood anointed him as a master of suspense, the heir to Hitchcock, a storyteller who could twist reality and shatter expectations with a single scene. His name became synonymous with the twist ending, a blessing and a curse that would follow him for decades. But the real transformation belonged to Bruce Willis. For years, critics had dismissed him as the smirking cowboy, the wisecracking cop who could save the day with bravado. The Sixth Sense shattered that perception. Here was a Willis stripped of swagger, speaking softly, eyes heavy with regret, a man carrying a grief he could barely name. Suddenly, Hollywood remembered something they had forgotten. Bruce Willis wasn't just an action star. He was an actor. The role earned him some of the strongest reviews of his career. It silenced his doubters, redeemed him in the eyes of Disney, and reminded audiences that vulnerability could be just as powerful as toughness. He had taken his punishment and turned it into triumph. And yet, the impact extended far beyond Hollywood. Audiences left theaters shaken, not just by the twist, but by what it represented. The idea that someone could walk through life invisible, unheard, already gone but not yet aware, that struck a universal chord. It wasn't just a ghost story. It was a meditation on isolation, loss, and the human need to be seen. The cultural echo was immediate. "I see dead people" became one of the most quoted lines in film history. Film schools dissected its structure. Psychologists praised its exploration of trauma. And Hollywood executives, once skeptical, scrambled to chase the formula Shyamalan and Willis had accidentally perfected. What was meant as a punishment had reshaped cinema. What began as a forced debt had rewritten legacies. And yet, the story didn't end there. Because behind the success, behind the accolades, lay a haunting truth that Bruce Willis himself would only reveal years later. For years, fans speculated about the mysteries of The Sixth Sense. How much did Bruce Willis know? Did he suspect the truth about Malcolm Crowe? Or was he, like the audience, kept in the dark until the very last moment? The answer came not from tabloids or studio executives, but from Willis himself. In rare interviews, he finally admitted what most fans never realized. He hadn't known the twist. He'd lived it blind. The deception wasn't just for the audience, it was for him. And when he saw the finished film for the first time, he was floored. That gasp, that moment of stunned realization audiences experienced in theaters. He lived it too. For Willis, the shock wasn't rehearsed, it was real. It's haunting, isn't it? That the greatest role of his later career wasn't chosen, wasn't planned, wasn't even fully understood by the man himself. It was forced upon him by punishment, shaped by secrecy, and immortalized by fate. And perhaps that's why the film endures. Because The Sixth Sense isn't just about ghosts. It's about being unseen, unheard, unacknowledged. It's about a man drifting through life without realizing he's already gone. In many ways, Bruce Willis's performance feels prophetic now. Today, as he battles a cruel illness that has silenced his voice and dimmed his presence, fans return to this role with new eyes. They see the quiet sadness, the desperate attempts to connect, the longing to be understood, and it feels achingly real. A punishment deal, a lost film, a twist hidden even from its star. Out of these broken pieces, Bruce Willis carved something eternal. And maybe that's the secret of The Sixth Sense. Not the shock, not the twist, not even the ghosts, but the reminder that even in silence, even in distance, even when the world stops listening, connection still matters. That's the legacy Bruce Willis gave us. And if you've made it this far, you know there are always more stories like this. Hidden truths, buried secrets, legacies waiting to be unearthed. So don't forget to subscribe, because the next untold story is already waiting in the shadows.